Fallout 4 has been out for quite a few years now, and as a consequence, there's a lot of different mods and mod collections that are out for the game and have been out for quite some time. It's not that the other collections out there are bad or that they don't deserve a video of their own or that they're not things that they do better than this particular collection does. But out of all of them, if I had to recommend just one, could only choose one to recommend to you, I would recommend Life in the Ruins. So what exactly is Life in the Ruins? Well, it is a very comprehensive and large mod collection that focuses primarily on survival mode. And to that, some people might say, well, survival mode for Fallout 4 just sucks. I myself like survival mode, but I can see why a lot of people traditionally don't like it. And that's what this experience and this collection is focusing on rebalancing. It does a lot of the traditional things that we're going to discuss, like adding more weapons to the game, more variety, more enemies, rebalancing the gameplay, the combat, adding more armors, more quests, more NPCs. It does all that too, but the focus is making survival a lot more fun and a lot more fair. Is it necessarily the most complex and hardcore survival experience out there available for the game? No. As a matter of fact, that is exactly why I'm recommending it. When I think of survival mode for Fallout in a mod collection, the first one that comes to mind is Anomaly. That is by far the more quote-unquote hardcore one, and I do tend to prefer it. With that said, although Anomaly is a great mod list in its own merit, it's very niche. I wouldn't recommend it just to the average player or to the most people, frankly. And I really gotta be in the mood to play that because again, it's pretty hard and it changes a lot about the game. It changes the game so much that you don't even feel like you're playing Fallout anymore. I'm not gonna focus too much on talking about Anomaly because that is not the point of this video and maybe that collection deserves a video of its own, but pretty much it overhauls the game and tries to turn it into something that looks like Stalker 2 and it doesn't even feel like you're playing Fallout anymore. Life in the Ruins feels a lot more like a vanilla plus type of experience. It really focuses on adding a ton to the game and a ton of different mods, but only stuff that really makes sense within the lore. Even some of the weapons and armors that it does add to the game are very lore friendly. And frankly, if it was your first time playing and you never played the base game, you would probably assume that they're not even a mod because they look like they fit in right into the base game. Alright, so what is the idea behind Life in the Ruins and how does it really improve your game? Well, let's start with the main point of focus, like I said, which is survival. In Fallout 4, survival mode really does feel like it was the way the game was meant to be played, but because it's not going to appeal to everybody, a lot of people don't like having to, I don't know, eat, sleep, drink and all that, they add it as an afterthought. The same thing they did with Starfield, the same thing they did with Skyrim. It feels like the game is designed with the idea of having survival elements and they create a lot of the framework and the skeleton for that to exist, but it's not the main game because Bethesda knows that the average person is probably not going to be into it. So as a consequence, I always feel like in Bethesda games, survival becomes this afterthought, right? It's not as well polished as it should be, and Fallout 4 is no different. Survival mode in Fallout 4 often feels unfair. It's often arduous and kind of annoying. You know, you seem to randomly die out of nowhere. You take one bullet from across the map and you die, and you can't save unless you sleep, so you lose like 2-3 hours worth of gameplay for something that, I don't know, you stepped on a trap. Some people might like this, and you know, to an extent, I like this. Before any of these collections came out, that is how I played the game. But I gotta admit, there are times where it gets annoying. So what this mod collection does, primarily, is it tries to make survival mode feel a lot more approachable and a lot more fun and enjoyable while also still feeling very fair. And when I say fair, it doesn't mean that it's a lot easier. It's definitely not. It is still very hard, but it's way less frustrating and it feels like this is what survival mode should have looked like. At least in my opinion, everything about Fallout has always screamed survival mode or you being a scavenger, right? It's this post-apocalyptic world where resources are super scarce and you're just trying to stay alive type of thing or just trying to get through it to get to your objective. That's always the vibe. With that said, in practice, it never really felt like that. It felt more like a shooter or a looter-shooter type of game, and the wasteland survival ambiance is just exactly that. It's just ambiance. It's just the atmosphere. It doesn't really feel like that's what you're doing. So maybe we should just start by saying that resources are extremely scarce, whether it be money or ammo. It's really hard to find stuff in general. You really feel like you're constantly scavenging for stuff. Something that never really happened to me during the vanilla game, but constantly happens while playing with this collection, is running out of ammo. More than once while playing with this collection, I found myself in a situation where I run out of ammo and I just have to pull out a machete just because I don't have any ammo and I'm in a spot. That never really happens during the vanilla experience. I'm always, loaded with ammo of all kinds. Scavenging and resource management is never really an issue. And it introduces all that to the game, and it really makes you feel like it's important, but it also does it in a way where it's not annoying, it's not obsessive. You don't have to obsess about things. It's not so needlessly hardcore about those elements to the point where it takes away from the experience or the fun. It doesn't really do that, but it does make you care about those things, and it makes you feel like you have to worry about it. Really throughout the entire game, and it's going to depend if you want to activate certain modes on the menu or not, or if you want to put some self-imposed rules there, but especially early on in the game, you're really going to feel like you have to manage those resources and especially your ammo. So that's the overall idea behind it before we get into the specifics about the mod collection and all the other details. Alright, so now let's go ahead and get into specifics and talk about a few different categories of things that it changes aside from just, the overall idea of survival. It does a lot more than that. Unfortunately, I can't name and go over every single mod that gets added to this collection because it's almost 800. We're going to be here all frickin' day. So let me just kind of summarize the different things that it changes and does, and you can go look up what mods specifically change each of those things. So probably one of the first things you're going to notice about this collection is the way that the game looks, the graphical overhaul, the lighting, and the scenery in general. The wasteland looks a lot greener, which a lot of different mods do this, and generally speaking, I'm usually not the biggest fan of this. I like the traditional look of the world. Now I gotta admit that over time, it really did grow on me because it doesn't feel overwhelming. It's not so different from Fallout that you couldn't believe that it's still the same world. You still feel like this is Fallout for sure. Even though the game does look a little bit different, nature looks a lot more greener and a lot more overgrown, there's a lot more trees and stuff like that, it does grow on you over time. You get used to it, and I now like it more than the original look of the game. It's less dull. You might argue that yes, it's a post-apocalyptic world and that's why everything looks dead. I completely understand what the vanilla was going for, but this looks really, really nice and I like it a lot. Especially when it comes to the weather system. It looks beautiful. When it rains, when there's like a fog or radiation rain and stuff like that, it's so cool. It makes you feel like the weather does really impact your ability to do things and really see stuff. There were many points in the game where I'm just like traversing through nature, trying to get from point A to point B. And then all of a sudden I see this fog, and it gets dark, the weather changes, and that really impacts how you have to approach the game. If you can't just look down a scope and see your enemies like 10 miles away because of the fog, it changes the way you gotta play, and I found that very dynamic and very fun. Aside from it just looking absolutely gorgeous and building an insane level of atmosphere, and the lighting and everything looks so beautiful. On top of that, also worth mentioning that the NPCs also look a lot nicer. I do think that the teeth in particular look a little bit weird. I don't know what mod is making that change, but most of them have this weird underbite going. I don't know why, it was done that way, but I couldn't do better, so I'm not going to complain. It still looks really nice and nicer than the vanilla. So I had already briefly mentioned the addition of armors and weapons before, but that is really not the focus, at least the addition of weapons specifically. The mod does add a lot of weapons, but it tries very, very hard to not escape too much from the vanilla plus type of experience. It doesn't want to add a bunch of weapons that don't make sense in the world. The few weapons that it does choose to add are very in line with what you would expect in that world, and they're not overpowered compared to everything else. It focuses a lot more on adding more potential modifications to the weapons that already exist, meaning that you can do a lot more with the existing weapons of the game as opposed to just flat out adding new weapons, which it does, but not a ton. That's not the focus. It also focuses on rebalancing a lot of these things, like the weapons, the armors, how they work, the perk tree itself, all of that gets rebalanced and reworked also. Also, what you'll notice is that there is a bigger emphasis on consuming quote-unquote quality food. Steam packs are not as useful anymore, and don't get me wrong, they're still very important at the one thing that they're supposed to be used for. Mainly, if you have an injury like your arm or your head or your legs, that's what the steam packs are going to really be used for, to cure those injuries. Now, when it comes to just spamming 20 of those in the middle of combat, it's not going to work because they heal very, very slowly and they don't heal as much. The actual food in the game that you either cook or hunt or buy or find, that has a way bigger impact on restoring health than steam packs do. Eating a proper meal is going to heal your entire health bar. It's not going to do it quickly. It's the same idea. You're not just going to spam eating food and that's going to solve all your problems, but it heals more than steam packs. And with that said, also comes the emphasis on actually cooking that food and it being high quality, because if you eat food that's raw or uncooked, you can get sick and, you're going to develop several afflictions that you're going to have to take care of later. As opposed to the vanilla game, you will actually find yourself cooking food or buying food from vendors a lot more often. You're actually probably going to find yourself even hunting at times because that's more important than steam packs, and those are super rare and expensive to find. That right there, in my opinion, is a huge contributing factor to making you feel like it's a survival scavenging type of experience that I keep bringing up, because it's not just like the average shooter where you're just spamming heals and that's it. No, you got to think about everything that you do. You got to think about the things that you choose to bring with you because of your carrying capacity and be strategic about that. You got to decide whether or not it's worth it to approach this scenario or this fight or not because of the resources that you have. But it's also not so punishing like the traditional survival mode for the game, where if you take one shot, no matter what you're wearing, you're probably gonna die. Like, that was super frustrating about the vanilla experience. You're still gonna be like looking for cover. You're still gonna be careful, but it's gonna feel fair and fun while also being engaging with all these systems. A lot of these other components, I'm just going to mention to you that you have full control over them. Like, if you want to enable fast traveling in survival mode, you can. Traditionally you can't, but you can if you want. If you don't want it, you don't have to. A lot of these different afflictions, or making the game more or less hardcore, being able to quick save and things like that, you can change all that at the menu. You get to decide how hard you want to make the game or not, how heavy you want to lean into the survival experience or not. That's why I recommend this, because it's kind of for everyone. Like I had said before, it rebalances several aspects of the combat and how the game works. And if you want to look at every single one of those details, the major mod that it uses is Lunar Fallout Overhaul Deluxe, and you can go read what every little thing that changes about the game. Okay, so aside from these survival elements and the rebalancing of the game and new weapons, armors, and the graphical overhauls, what else does it do? Just like you would expect from a list of this size, it does add a lot more quests, NPCs, locations, and in general, it makes the game feel a lot less empty. The first location that comes to mind for me is that abandoned museum that you rescued the Minutemen from at the beginning of the game. When you come back to that location shortly after the initial events of the story, a lot of the places that are boarded up, like you can't go into them, are now stores, and there's a lot more people living there. There's not like a bar there, there's a doctor, there's stores, there's people walking around. So in general, the world feels a lot less empty. There's more NPCs and a lot more things to discover. There's so many different surprises and hidden locations that I just don't want to spoil it, so I'll maybe show one or two of them. But there are so many places and structures and caves that are not a part of the vanilla, but you come across them and you're like, I wonder what's in there, and then whatever happens type of thing, or there's a story behind it. It's very, very cool. The problem that a lot of different mod collections have is that they're so massive just for the sake of being massive, and they add things to the game just for the sake of adding more things to the game. And a lot of times they feel like they don't belong with the lore, or they feel out of place, or they kind of make the game unbalanced or broken. I've certainly, made my own list for years that do exactly that. Just about everything that gets added on this list is very purposeful in nature. It's not about, more is better. It's about the quality of what's being put in there versus just the quantity, even though there is a ton. The final thing I'm going to mention is the audio, which sounds a lot more immersive and a lot more atmospheric in nature. You're probably going to first notice this when you fire a gun. Let me just let you listen to it. This combined with the lighting and some of the graphical changes and the weathers and all that, everything together creates this package that you just feel very, very immersed into the game. You really buy that you're actually there type of thing. It's awesome. So my final thought here, if I had to describe this collection to anybody with like one phrase and explain what it is, I would say that this collection is a survival vanilla plus experience. That's what it is, and that is why if I had to recommend any collection to just about anybody, this would be it. If you stuck with me till the very end, I thank you very much for your time. If you did in fact like this video, please don't forget to hit it with a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this in the future, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you can see every time I upload a new video. Thanks once again for watching and have a great week. Take care.